What happens when one of the most isolated nations on Earth forms an alliance with a small, landlocked African country fed up with foreign pressure? You get a political shockwave, one that could reshape the balance of power in an already fragile region. Burkina Faso, under the unapologetically bold leadership of Ibrahim Traoré, has revived diplomatic relations with none other than North Korea, the very nation much of the world steers clear of. But for Traoré, this isn't about conforming to global expectations. It's about forging a new direction, one that boldly declares, "We don't need your permission." This move doesn't just challenge the norms, it tears up the entire rulebook. It's Burkina Faso rejecting traditional diplomacy and asserting its right to choose its own alliances. What comes next is uncertain. Will it lead to arms deals, military training, technological exchanges, or perhaps just a stronger voice in a world that typically ignores Africa unless it wants its natural resources? What's certain is that this is more than just a diplomatic photo op. It's about reshaping influence. For North Korea, it's a rare opportunity to gain political ground in Africa, a continent where it's had minimal presence. And for Burkina Faso, it sends the clearest message yet. We'll choose our allies, and we don't care if the West approves. But before we go further, we'd like to hear from you. Do you support Russia and North Korea reportedly sending troops to help Traoré resist Western influence? Share your thoughts in the comments. This partnership between Burkina Faso and North Korea isn't just symbolic. It's a lifeline for both sides. For North Korea, it's a calculated strategy to counter Western pressure. After years of being isolated, Pyongyang has opened a new door in Africa. It's not just about transferring weapons or knowledge. It's about building a meaningful alliance, one that helps North Korea show it's not as isolated as many believe. By aligning with nations like Burkina Faso, Pyongyang scores a political victory. And despite its economic struggles, North Korea holds a significant asset: its military-industrial capabilities. Behind its closed borders, it continues to manufacture weapons, train cyber forces, and develop everything from firearms to missile systems. International sanctions may have battered its economy, but its weapons production remains active. Burkina Faso, under siege from growing insurgent threats, urgently needs military support. Enter North Korea, with just the kind of weaponry the country is seeking. What begins as a diplomatic gesture quickly evolves into a strategic arms deal. Burkina Faso secures the firepower it desperately needs, while North Korea gains something even more valuable: money and geopolitical leverage. That cash could be funneled directly into Pyongyang's military programs, possibly even its nuclear development. And here's the clever twist. By selling arms to Burkina Faso, North Korea sidesteps UN sanctions. There's no need to play by international rules when your new partners are just as fed up with Western pressure. Burkina Faso, in need of weapons and unbothered by Western judgment, becomes the perfect customer. For North Korea, it's a jackpot, expanding its influence, raking in funds, and planting its presence in a region where it previously had none. This alliance could even act as a gateway to other African or Asian nations frustrated by Western dominance. North Korea's sudden bond with Burkina Faso isn't random. It's part of a long-term strategy. Pyongyang knows it can't challenge major powers like the US or Europe head-on. Instead, it targets the blind spots, regions where chaos and neglect have left space for new players. Enter the Sahel, a zone torn by insurgency, unrest, and broken promises. France, the US, and others have tried to stabilize the region, but their efforts have left many disappointed. So when North Korea appears, offering support with no moral lectures, it stands out. For Pyongyang, this isn't just about helping Traoré. It's about inserting itself into a valuable region, rich in minerals, energy, and strategic trade corridors. While the West loses ground, North Korea whispers, "We're here, and we're listening." Even more strategically, North Korea isn't simply handing over weapons, it's testing them. Burkina Faso becomes a live battlefield where Pyongyang can observe how its surveillance tech, missiles, and cyber tools perform in real combat conditions. It's like two underdogs training side by side. Burkina Faso gains crucial tools, and North Korea gathers critical data. Both sides benefit. If this partnership proves effective, North Korea could use it as a case study to attract more allies, especially in regions battling instability or Western interference. The message is simple. If it works in Burkina Faso, it can work for you too. For Pyongyang, this is more than an arms deal. It's a strategic expansion and a potential marketing triumph. And behind it all is a larger ambition, one not just about profit, but about positioning itself as an alternative power for the global South. North Korea is making a bold move in a place where the West has long held sway. Africa has been the battleground for global powers for years, with everyone wanting a stake, but few actually considering what Africans truly desire. So when North Korea aligns itself with a leader like Ibrahim Traoré, who openly rejects external control, it sends a clear message. Pyongyang is saying, we may be isolated, but we're far from powerless. We don't follow the rules, we rewrite them. Supporting Burkina Faso isn't just about providing military assistance. It's about making a statement of defiance. For years, North Korea has been sanctioned, criticized, and isolated by Western countries. Now, it's forging new alliances in regions the West has either ignored or tried to dominate. This isn't just a pragmatic move, it's symbolic. By standing with Burkina Faso, North Korea positions itself as a challenge to the Western-dominated global order, a system that has long tried to shape Africa in its image. For Traoré, this partnership is a chance to carve out his own path with support from a nation that understands what it means to be marginalized. However, such a move doesn't come without its consequences. Western governments are already threatening to cut aid, tighten sanctions, and reassess diplomatic ties. The backlash is palpable. Why work with a regime that's often labeled as unpredictable and dangerous? But for Traoré, the deal makes perfect sense. He needs military strength, and he's not interested in seeking Western approval. Yet this decision could result in economic isolation, political friction, and increased scrutiny from global watchdogs. Traoré's approach isn't just a bold shift. It's a rejection of the long-standing playbook followed by many African leaders. For decades, Western countries have operated under a silent agreement. We'll give you loans, peacekeepers, and some infrastructure. But in return, you follow our system, our way of thinking, and our global voting patterns. And most importantly, you don't challenge the system. But Traoré isn't interested in playing by those rules. He isn't trying to be the ideal African leader that Western powers often endorse. Instead, he's rejecting the notion that real progress requires foreign approval. True sovereignty, to Traoré, means having the freedom to choose who to work with, regardless of whether that partner is controversial, isolated, or shunned by the global elite. When he reached out to North Korea, it wasn't out of admiration for the regime or agreement with all of its policies. Rather, Traoré sees in Pyongyang something that the West can't offer: a nation that has stood its ground, resisted foreign influence, and thrived despite global attempts to isolate it. That resilience and independence are exactly what Traoré values, and it's what makes Western leaders uneasy. If Burkina Faso manages to forge its own path, militarily, economically, and politically, without leaning on old colonial frameworks or Western institutions, it sends a loud and clear message to the rest of Africa. You don't have to play by their rules anymore. The concern from the West isn't just about Burkina Faso partnering with North Korea. It's the ripple effect they fear. What if Mali follows suit? What if Niger, Guinea, or Central African nations begin seeking alliances with powers outside the Western sphere? Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, on terms they define themselves. That's why Traoré is being branded a threat, a rebel, even a destabilizing force. Because his actions disrupt a system that's been entrenched for over 50 years. It's a system in which the West dictates what's best for Africa and expects loyalty in exchange for aid and global recognition. But Traoré is placing a different bet. He believes Burkina Faso doesn't need to chase approval or recognition to matter. Instead, he's asserting that the country can shape its future independently, without conforming to a Western-designed mold. Traoré isn't just challenging the system, he's turning it on its head. For decades, Burkina Faso followed the path charted by Western powers and international bodies. It accepted aid, joined global peace efforts, and listened to the advice of its former colonizers. Yet after years of compliance, the results were grim: stalled development, rising insurgencies, and a population trapped in a state of survival. That's why Traoré is doing what few leaders dare. He's walking away. Walking away from the idea that progress requires foreign approval. Walking away from a model that treats African nations as perpetual students under supervision. His outreach to North Korea isn't a desperate gamble. It's a deliberate and symbolic choice. It's his way of saying, we won't rebuild our future by following the same voices that helped dismantle it in the first place. Western powers call it reckless. They flood media with warnings about the dangers of this new alliance. But Traoré remains unfazed. Every headline, every threat of sanctions, every diplomatic snub only reinforces his belief that Burkina Faso is doing something significant. Something bold enough to rattle the old order. And to him, that's the goal. He doesn't see isolation as punishment. He sees it as a fresh start, a blank page to rewrite the rules. For Traoré, real independence isn't just symbolic gestures, like flying a flag or printing currency. It's about choosing your own allies, defending your land on your terms, and deciding who earns a seat at your table. That's why this partnership with North Korea stands out. It's not about idolizing the regime. This isn't just about diplomacy. It's about alignment. North Korea remains one of the few nations on Earth that has stood firm under relentless global pressure. Sanctions, embargoes, condemnation from every direction, you name it, they've endured it. While much of the international community views Pyongyang as an outcast, Traoré sees something else entirely: resilience. He sees a regime that never bowed down. And in that, he finds inspiration. This isn't just a political decision, it's a shared worldview. Two nations, both constantly told to know their place, choosing instead to rise on their own terms. Burkina Faso, long sidelined in global affairs, is now pushing back, declaring, "We'll make our own choices, even if it unsettles you." North Korea, on its end, embraces this defiance. Finally, someone is speaking their language of rebellion and self-reliance. Their relationship isn't just transactional, it's symbolic. It's about two nations flipping off a world order that decides who gets to lead and who must fall in line. For the first time in decades, Burkina Faso isn't just reacting to global events, it's reshaping them. North Korea's support for Burkina Faso goes beyond weapons or advisors. It's a challenge to the status quo. For years, global diplomacy has resembled a rigid classroom. Western nations acting as strict teachers, while the rest are expected to stay quiet, obedient, and grateful. Now, two of the so-called problem students have joined forces, and they're rewriting the syllabus. Let's be honest, North Korea didn't suddenly become a savior on the world stage. It has spent decades rejecting the West's rules, refusing to conform. It's a nation that built rockets instead of resorts, silos instead of stock exchanges, because survival and sovereignty mattered more than global approval. So when Traoré turned away from Western allies and looked eastward toward Pyongyang, it wasn't a random pivot. It was a declaration. He wasn't just choosing military cooperation, he was embracing an ideology. North Korea sees itself reflected in Burkina Faso. Small but unyielding. cornered but unbroken, under siege but still in the fight. Traoré's decision to partner with Kim Jong-un is a bold signal to the world. We won't ask for permission to define our destiny. And North Korea, it thrives on that energy. To them, Burkina Faso isn't just another country. It's a new front line in the battle against Western dominance. By providing arms, strategic guidance, or whatever else they can offer, North Korea is doing more than fueling a resistance. It's helping carve out a new geopolitical reality, one where traditional superpowers no longer monopolize the narrative. And the message coming from this unlikely alliance, it couldn't be louder. You don't need to be liked to wield power. You don't need validation to make a stand. You just need the courage to go against the current. That's what makes this alliance so impactful. It's more than diplomacy. It's an act of rebellion. It's two nations, both pushed to the margins, standing tall and saying, "We're not broken, we're just done being silent." For Burkina Faso, this isn't about chasing a better bargain, it's about reclaiming dignity. Traoré isn't interested in handouts tied to strings or lectures disguised as loans. He wants power on his own terms. And North Korea, despite its controversies, offers exactly that. No strings, no moralizing, just raw, unwavering solidarity. So when Western leaders brand Traoré as reckless, he doesn't flinch. To him, those criticisms are marks of pride. Because if the same powers that failed to bring peace, growth, or justice to Burkina Faso are now upset, then maybe, just maybe, he's finally doing something right. And let's be clear, this move isn't just for Burkina Faso. Traoré is speaking to every African nation that's ever been sidelined, patronized, or overlooked. He's saying, you can choose your own way, you don't have to wait for permission. Once dismissed as a struggling, landlocked country in West Africa, Burkina Faso is rewriting its story. Under the bold leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, it's capturing the world's attention, not by pleading for support, but by asserting independence. This isn't the recycled playbook Africa's been forced to follow for decades. It's something radically different, a new chapter defined by self-determination and sovereignty. And at the center of it is an alliance few saw coming: Burkina Faso and North Korea. Unlikely, maybe, but look closer. These are two nations battered by the same forces: foreign interference, global pressure, and a legacy of being told to stay in line. Now they're standing together, not because of shared borders, but because of shared resolve. Burkina Faso has become the type of partner North Korea rarely finds: bold, unapologetic, and determined to chart its own course. Under Traoré, it's no longer waiting to be saved. It's seizing control of its narrative. And in doing so, it's become a symbol of what it looks like when a nation walks away from outdated systems to build something new. For North Korea, this partnership is strategic gold. It grants them a foothold in Africa, a continent rich in resources, youth, and momentum for change. More importantly, it amplifies a mutual message: we will not be controlled. Together, these two nations are showing that resistance isn't just a possibility, it's contagious. Their alliance isn't built on staged smiles or empty photo ops. It's built on purpose. It's rooted in something deeper, a shared understanding of what it means to be bullied on the global stage, of what it feels like to be punished for breaking the rules written by others, of being misunderstood, criticized, and still refusing to back down. So now ask yourself, has the West, with all its aid, influence, and polished promises, ever truly had Africa's best interests at heart? Or has it simply mastered the long game of control, dressed up in the language of development, democracy, and diplomacy? That's the real question. Now, we want to hear from you. Is this a smart move for Burkina Faso? Is it risky, revolutionary, or exactly the kind of bold step Africa must take to stop being treated like a project and start being respected as a power? Let's talk about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Be real. Be bold. Let your voice be part of a conversation that actually matters. And if these are the truths that fire you up, don't just watch. Subscribe to our channel, not just to stay informed, but to be part of a growing community that refuses to sit quietly while others define Africa's future. Because Africa shouldn't be whispered about in global rooms. It should be heard.